All right, let's get something straight right out of the gate. If you're walking through or into All right, let's get something straight right out of the gate. If you're walking into tough conversations thinking you got it all figured out, thinking you already know what the other person's going to say, that you already know what you're going to say, you've got some speech prepared, well, you're not leading. You're not managing. You're just performing a solo act in your head. And guess what? That will not get you results. It's not going to fix anything. That gets you resistance. That gets you silence. That gets you people nodding yes and doing nothing. So welcome back to the Business Mechanic Show. I'm Vaughn Sigmund, your go-to guy for tuning up your leadership engine and getting performance back in gear. And today, we're cracking open one of the most mismanaged parts of leadership, the art of the difficult conversation. And yes, I've done previous podcasts on this, and yes, to my pleasure, it's one of the most favorite topics and also one of the most downloaded topics of all my podcasts. But today I want to take a slightly new take on things. I'm going to show you how to take the heat out of the conflict, lead with clarity, and keep your cool, even when the other person's about to blow a fuse and eat off your face. And hey, before we dive in, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you want the deep dive guide to mastering tough talks, there's going to be a link in the show notes for you to download a free version of my ebook, The Roadmap to Difficult Conversations. It's packed with real-world scripts, frameworks, and step-by-step tactics. Much more detail than you're going to get on this podcast today that will transform the way you lead and get results. So let's be freaking real. Most managers screw up tough conversations because they come in hot. They come in emotional. They come in defensive. They come in pre-planned and pre-scripted in all the wrong ways. They're loaded with assumptions. They're armed with conclusions. They're dead set on being right, which is a big mistake. Because the second you walk into a conversation, this doesn't matter whether you're at home or at work or just with friends. This goes all across your life, but we're only talking about work here. Because the second you walk into a conversation thinking you already know what the other person's going to say or what they should say, you've already lost. You're not having a conversation. You're running a monologue in your head, fairy tale usually, and that's ripe for disappointment. And guess what? That's not leadership. If you're a manager who wants to actually influence, not just talk, then you need a real skill set for navigating difficult conversations with your direct reports, your peers, and yes, even your boss. So let's break it down. Here's the number one mindset shift you need to make. Ditch the intention invention. Here's the poison pill that kills productive dialogue. Pre-loaded perception. You invent an intention. You know why they did it. Assign it to the other person and then react to the story you made up in your own head. That is an emotional landmine. That's landmine 101. What should I do instead? Well, sounds easy, hard to do. You got to retrain yourself. You got to change some habits and emotions. You need to assume you don't know the full story. Because you don't. You really don't. The old saying goes, there's more than one side to a story. Assume that you have a perspective worth hearing, because you do. You know what you know, but you got to keep in mind what you don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. It was a little confusing, but it's true. You've got to make it your job to discover, not declare. You're not going to go in and tune this person up. You're going to tell them what's what, and that's going to be some magical change to their performance. You might get a week or 2 or 30 days of improvement out of that, but you will not get sustained improvement out of that. And I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan of Jefferson Fisher, and he puts together a 3-step framework I'm going to share with you today. If you want the conversation to stay productive and not spiral into a finger-pointing match between two adversaries, use this setup. 1, tell them what you want to talk about. Set the stage. Let them know what the topic is and why it matters. Number 2, tell them how you want the conversation to end. Now, this isn't manipulation, it's clarity. Whether it's understanding each other better, agreeing on a next step, or simply hearing both sides, say it up front. And number 3, get their buy-in before it begins. Ask, does that work for you? And if you do that, you create alignment before diving in. So how does that sound? Here's what it's going to sound like in real life. Hey, I'd like to talk to you about the last project you wrapped up, specifically around deadlines and communication. My goal here is for us to both walk away understanding what went wrong and what we can do better moving forward. Are you okay having that conversation right now? Now you've got direction. Now you've got consent. Now you're leading. So here's the 3-step framework for listening like a leader. Once you set it up, how do I set it up? I'll tell them what I'm going to talk about, tell them how you want the conversation to end, and get their buy-in before it begins. Now you're going to follow this framework. One, you're going to mirror. You're going to repeat back what you hear, not what you think you heard. Use their words. What I'm hearing you say is, let me make sure I understand. Did I get that right? Number 2, validate. You're not agreeing, you're acknowledging their reality. That makes sense given what you've experienced. Okay, yeah, I can understand how that make you feel that way. Number 3, guide. Now and only now, you get to steer the ship. You get to talk now by saying an opening line like, would you be open to looking at this from this lens or my lens or someone else's lens? Can I share what I'm seeing from my side? So you mirror. What I hear you saying is, you validate. Oh, that makes sense given what you experienced. And number 3, can I share what I'm seeing? Arguments often come without this framework. And arguments, my friends, always create losers. Nobody wins in an argument. Even if you think you won, you lost. You think you scored a win because you cornered someone with facts? Congrats. You lost their trust. You lost their respect. Arguments sometimes feel good in the moment, especially when you think you're right. And that being right is a crippling mindset. But they're emotional grenades that will absolutely blow up long-term respect others have with you. Nobody likes being proven wrong, in front of others especially, but even in private. So let's not go for right and wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. Do this. Ask more questions. Then you can make some statements based on what you learn. Remember, you don't know what you don't know. Fill in the gaps. And then manage your emotions. Don't let any of that trigger you. And then probing. Don't just take the first sentence or the first statement or the first paragraph as that's all there is. Say things like, tell me more. Instead of saying, that's not true. Yeah, tell me more. Let's hear all of this before you shut them down with your truth. Watch your tone, watch your body language, watch your eyes, watch how you're responding. If your voice tightens, if you start feeling like you're getting ready, you get that little, hair on the back of your head standing up, well, you're going into the red zone, and the red zone is nowhere you need to be right now. You've got to control yourself. And if I know going into this, I'm likely not going to be fully right, I go into this prepared to know that I might get triggered, I might get PO'd about this. You've got to understand, you've got to control the only thing you can, which is yourself. If the other person comes at you hot, agitated, emotional, maybe even rude, don't match their energy. You need to de-escalate. That's leadership. How do I do that? Let me share that with you. Lower your voice. Speak softer. When they go up, you go down. Literally lower your voice. Number 2, name that emotion. Name the emotion you're hearing from them. Sounds like that's really got you frustrated. Man, you seem really upset by that. Acknowledge it. Name it. And then pause. Silence creates space. And space cools heat. So don't get into this back and forth. Don't get into a sparring match. Lower your voice. Name the emotion. Sounds like you're really frustrated with that. And then pause. Don't feel like you have to fill the gap. Often, that pause, you repeating it, lowering your emotion, not matching the emotion, create that silence. That gives them a moment or 3 to think about what they've said and where they're at, and often will bring them down. But it requires you to stay grounded. They'll eventually come down. They'll come down to your level, but not because you told them to, but because you modeled how to. Don't lose your cool. In fact, the goal in all this is never have to apologize. One of the biggest wins of using this approach is you don't blow up and say something stupid you'll regret later. You stay calm, you stay centered, you stay in control, you're controlling yourself. Only you can control you. Nobody else controls you, and you know that. Nobody makes you do anything. You make you do things. So stay centered, stay calm, and stay clear. This isn't about you appearing weak or being weak. It's about you being strong and showing strength under pressure. And the more you practice it, the more respect you earn. Now, somebody say, well, Vaughn, they're often wrong. Okay, they're wrong. You still go through the same process. You've got to help them understand that they're wrong. Or maybe they're not. But as you're having the conversation, you're finding out their facts are wrong, their understanding is wrong, or their perception is wrong. You still don't come in with that Perry Mason aha moment. You don't come in like a wrecking ball. What you need to try is, that's an interesting take. Walk me through how you got there. What's created this? I want to understand your logic. Once they feel heard, you can now guide. Oh, okay. I hear where you're coming from. May I share what I've seen that might shift how you're viewing this? Or may I share what I know or have found out that may change how you're looking at this? It's not about winning. It's not about you slapping them into place and being right. It's about leading them to clarity, listening to them. Very often I look at this as a martial arts contest. I want to hear them. And the more they get to speak and share, even if it's emotional, share their emotional, you're draining that energy. You're draining that aggressiveness. You're getting them down to homeostasis. You're slowing them down. They've been heard. That's going to create respect. And now, and only now, can you start having some real world discussion. But in order to do that, you need to be prepared with some real world scripts. Be prepared before you go into this. I'm going to give you 3 different scenarios and what you might be thinking about when it comes to going into one of these conversations. Now, if you're having it with a direct report, you say something like, hey, I noticed the deadlines have been slipping. Now, I don't want to jump to any conclusions. Can you walk me through what's happening from your side? Then you want to mirror it. So, okay. So it sounds like you've been overloaded since we restructured. I get it. That's a lot to handle. And now you want to validate it. Okay. I get where you're coming from. Let's figure out how we can get ahead of this so deadlines aren't an issue moving forward. Here's one idea. You share it with them and ask them, would that work for you? And then you want to guide them. Give them some instruction, give them some guidance of how they can lower their workload, change their reality to make sure things get done on time. Now, if you're having this conversation with a peer, you say something like, I got the sense from our last meeting that you might not be aligned with this project's direction. You want to walk me through where that's coming from? And, okay, makes sense if you push for speed. It's your KPI. And I'm watching for accuracy, so I think that's where we're clashing. You want speed. You want your KPI to be hit, but I've got to make sure it's perfect. That's where we're clashing. Let's do this. Let's find a way to overlap at how we can get your speed and get our accuracy or improve things so we don't burn time chasing 2 different goals. We got one goal, and that's to get this done. See how that changes? Now, the toughest one probably is with your boss. Hey, boss, I wanted to run something by you. I've noticed a few challenges with how the team's prioritizing things, and I'm wondering if I'm missing something. How are you seeing the bigger picture? Team seems overloaded. How are you seeing this? Oh, I get it. That perspective helps a lot. I wasn't seeing how that initiative tied to the broader goals. Always bring the heat down. Here's some tips on how to bring folks back from the edge. 1, want to acknowledge that I can see that this really matters to you. Let's figure it out together. Whoa, I'm not here to fight. I'm just here to understand. When they start going into hyperbole and randomness and broad assertions like, you do this all the time. Whoa, no, hold on. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to understand your perspective, but careful where you're going with that. You've got my full attention. Let's take this one step at a time. You don't get triggered. You don't get emotional. You don't get heated. Whoa, I'm not here to fight even if they want to. And avoid these trigger phrases. They never work. You need to calm down. Oh my God, you're overreacting. That's not what happened. Never works, y'all. It just adds fuel to the fire. So instead, you might want to use words like, hold on, let's take a breath here. Help me understand. I want to hear your full side of the story. Get it? Very different, right? That calms people down. Let me give you a couple examples of some famous leaders who mastered the art of doing this. Dwight Eisenhower, which is one of my favorite presidents in history, he was known for his very calm demeanor. Even though he was a general running Europe during World War II for the Allied forces. He was a very calm guy. He was a super calm president, although he had a heart attack while he was in office. But anyway, he had a very calm demeanor. And his ability to keep competing personalities in check, especially during World War II and even in his presidency. He made time to listen. He was a great listener. And he used silence as a strategic weapon. And that silence often diffused tension. You can do the same thing. You have to train yourself to do it. Everybody knows who Abraham Lincoln is. Let's think about the difficulties he faced as a president. He navigated one of the most divided periods in American history by listening deeply, telling stories, and diffusing conflict with empathy, understanding, seeing both sides of the challenge, and then applying logic to solutions. And many of you know Steve Jobs, who, despite his intensity, he had some very bad habits. He was also a great leader. He got a lot of things done. He had moments where he'd pause and reflect during feedback sessions. He'd listen, he'd pause, allow everybody else to pause, everybody else to think, most importantly, him to think. And then what he was thinking about, what's the next question? What am I missing here? What more do I need to know to understand this? And then he'd ask the right question. And very often, pausing, thinking for the entire room to be able to stop where they were going. It's a pattern interrupt. That would allow breakthroughs for him, more importantly, his team. Slow it down. So the bottom line, don't walk into conversations to win. Hold your opinions loosely, and keep in mind you want to walk into learning. You don't know what you don't know, even though you think you know. Don't talk to prove a point. Don't overtalk. Don't interrupt. Don't be overly aggressive. Do not make it a monologue. Make it a dialogue. And the discussion needs to be one where you can understand the other person's thoughts, experiences, their perception of things. And again, if you want a deeper dive on how to lead these conversations without stepping on a landmine, grab the free book, The Roadmap to Difficult Conversations. You'll never look at leadership the same way again, and you'll never have to say, I'm sorry, I lost my temper. I said that all wrong. I came across the wrong way. I didn't mean to be like that. Ever again. That's just not better management. That's real power. So are you ready to start having conversations that drive real change? Take these tips I shared with you today. Start practicing today. The next time someone pushes your buttons, pause and lead instead. Like, get out there and get at it.